Hello, we are here in a conversation with Dr. Michael Laitman. Hello, Dr. Michael Laitman.
Hello.
Now that the world is going through a very special stage in its development, in its social, political development, there are many questions that arise in regard to how we should handle it. Should there be a special relation, a special approach, perhaps, that we Jews should take toward the situation, toward Israel, toward relations between Israel and the diaspora Jews. And we would like to bring up some of these issues with Dr. Laitman. So the first issue that I'd like to bring up is a very sensitive one, a little painful, actually, more than a little. And the topic is anti-Semitism. I'll start with a quote. The Jerusalem Post reported that the U.S. State Department reports growing global anti-Semitism. The report on religious freedom described a global increase in anti-Semitism and said that the rising tide of anti-Semitism was among the key trends of last year. That was talking about 2011. It's only increasing, as we can see, in 2012. So the question is, why is this trend of anti-Semitism happening? And why specifically now?
Well, first of all, what I'm talking and speaking, the perspective I'm speaking from is a Kabbalist. I'm engaged in Kabbalah for over 35 years even, so I can't really speak from any other angle. And therefore, I have to sort of start from a prelude. And the prelude is this. First, let's see where it all stems from. The whole of humanity, according to the plan of creation, has to evolve in a process, in an evolutionary process, at which we eventually attain the world we're living in. And today, even according to science, such as quantum physics and other discoveries, and of course what's written in the Torah, on the other hand, and what Kabbalah itself talks about, we live in a world that is broad, wide, eternal, whole, and what we discover from it is only a small fragment. And that small fragment that we now feel is what we call this world. The goal is that human beings in this world will evolve to reach an opening, a discovery of the broad, wide world. And in that wide world, they have to discover the force governing this world and all the worlds, called the upper force or the Creator. There are people who appeared for the first time in ancient Babylon, and they felt an inkling, a tendency towards discovering that broad world and the force governing the world, also because there was a crisis back then, which is symbolized as the Tower of Babel. And then one of the priests of the Babylonian people, whose name was Abraham, he collected those people and led them from Babylon to the land of Canaan, which is the land of Israel today, and made them a group of Kabbalists, a group of people who discover the upper world and live in both worlds, both in our world, with their bodies, and in their awareness and consciousness of the upper force, the Creator. And they wrote from that a book called the Torah, the Nevi'im, Ketuvim, Mishnah, Gemara, and so on. And all those books are in fact about the discovery of the spiritual world. So the revelation happens when a person rises above his ego to an extent.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. The books such as the Gemara Talmud, Midrash, Mishnah, that normally we relate to them as giving us instructions, you know, what to do in our lives, how to treat, I don't know, how to till the ground and how to treat each other and all that. You're saying it is all about the spiritual world.
Of course.
Or some other world.
Of course, these books tell us in our words about this world. However, they tell us where these laws are coming from, because the laws of the Torah are irrational. There's no rationality in them. Of course, it is good and healthy for the human body, but it's because it stems from an upper spiritual root. And according to that, all the laws, even in our world, provide a healthy and better result. But the root of all these laws is actually in the upper world, the spiritual world. So it wasn't written just by people who were experts in economics or agriculture or doctors or anything else. It was written by those sages. What were they? Why were they sages? They had spiritual attainment of the upper force. This is called written in the Holy Spirit. They attained what's called the Holy Spirit, and they wrote it in our words, because it can only be clear to us that way. They can only communicate it that way. And so they explained what is happening in the upper world and in this world. The upper world is the roots, and this world is the outcomes.
Because I have to admit, when I put on my tefillin, I don't feel any holier, any higher than before. You know, it's you just do it.
The wisdom of Kabbalah teaches you how, when you lay the tefillin, you'll also understand what is the connection as well. So we lived with that sensation until the ruin of the temple, which is until 2,000 years ago. And then we went out to exile. What is the exile? It's not just exile which is physically out of Israel, but it's also the exile in the sense of leaving the sense of the upper force. However, it's not the main point right now. The point is that those Babylonians who didn't go along with Abraham, those who stayed in Babylon and then scattered around the globe, meaning the entire human population today across the globe comes from there. And those Babylonians are called nations of the world. We are called Israel.
But it's not like there were people only in Babylon, like, what, 5,000 years ago? There were...
Most of the population was really the core of humanity that later has evolved and accomplished many things and reached many places. For instance, like the Spanish population that went to Latin America and brought their culture and religion there. They all came from Babylon to all the other continents.
I see what you're saying. So it's like it's as if there was like a more developed core kind of in Mesopotamia, in that whole Fertile Crescent area.
Yes, and this is something known all around the world. People are aware of this. It is written that Abraham took that group with him, and towards all the other people there in Babylonian, he was considered like a Kohen or a priest, a teacher for people. He was a very distinguished person, and he taught them as well, but in a different way, called handing out gifts. And he sent them to the land of Kedem, it says, mostly to there, which is the direction of the east in India. And later they also scattered around Europe and in many countries. So that group of Abraham developed and reached the land of Israel, and after the exile, they came to Israel, they built the first temple and the second temple. They had spiritual attainment, which means attainment of the upper world and the upper force. And afterwards, after they had attainment of the spiritual force, the upper force, they lost it, they descended.
So basically, according to Kabbalah, you already now have a situation where there's a group of people who attain the higher world, and the rest of the world that doesn't attain it, that is just people. And only this group gets it.
Once, the Jewish people were all attaining the upper world, and it's written that even philosophy and science and everything that humanity has developed, for instance, Johannes Reuchlin, the German philosopher from medieval time, writes about this, Mirandola as well, many such examples. Actually, I have them all collected on my site, and they're all admitting and openly saying that all the wisdoms and philosophies were all taken from the people of Israel back in the days of the prophets, meaning when they had spiritual attainment.
Even Goethe and Leibniz, others, yes.
Yes. So the plan of the evolution of the world is that the 2,000 years of exile is a time when the people of Israel are mingled with all the nations of the world. As it's written, the people of Israel went out to exile in order to join the souls of the nations. So we mingled with all of the world, and it's expressed especially through culture and science and so on. When we left the feeling of the spiritual world and were only left with the feeling of this world, we were left with what we know today as simple religion, Judaism. And what we started working with as a religion was later developed further into Christianity and Islam and so on.
Historically, everyone knows it.
Right. So it says that after 2,000 years, and it's happening exactly in the 20th and 21st century, we come back to the land of Israel from the exile in order to discover the spiritual world. And the entire world is going through a huge crisis. And we are beginning to feel this right now. Everyone. What's happening is that humanity is beginning to be connected and dependent, interdependent as one body, one system. Just like the people of Israel, the Jewish people back in the past were all connected. As it's known, all of Israel are friends, the acceptance of the Torah under Mount Sinai, to be in unity, love thy friend as thyself, the love of Israel, and so on, which no nation had back then. For our nation, it was a law, meaning that if you start making that connection, you begin to feel through it the spiritual world. You attain such qualities through which you feel the Creator and the spiritual world, and you live in both worlds. You no longer feel death. You feel eternity and wholeness of nature.
I'd like to talk about unity later, maybe in another conversation. Right now, I'd like to focus on anti-Semitism.
Right. So we're right there. Sorry. So from the time of Babylon and forward, anti-Semitism actually exists, only in a very small extent back then, in ancient times. There were, different types of relations between the nation of Israel and all the neighbors. Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Rome, Greece, Egypt. However, what happened is that as we descended from the spiritual stature we had, anti-Semitism prevailed. We know all those historical periods with the Greeks and the Romans and so on. So we started losing our spiritual sensation, our spiritual attainment. We left the connection with the upper force, and we were left as a regular people, a weak people, in terms of being a few. And we came out to exile, and that's what we have left with today. Besides that, we also lost 10 tribes since the times of the temple. And today, we only have the 2 tribes which are appearing as the Jews that we know today. So what's happening is that Now, in this crisis, which is exactly similar to the crisis in Babylon, what's happening is this. Back then,
Yes.
it was like a mini model of civilization that was capable of either unifying and connecting, like Abraham suggested, but they didn't hear him, and only a small part of that Babylon went out of there and moved to the land of Israel, and they called themselves Yehudim, Jewish, from the word Yehud, which means unity, to unite, or Israel, from the words Yashar Kel, directly to the Creator. And the others didn't want it, didn't understand it. But the Tower of Babel is like a symbol. It's like Mount Sinai. It symbolizes great competition and hatred between everyone, and they themselves wanted to attain,
Yes.
to rise higher, higher and higher, and attain everything there is. As it's written, our desire is to see our King. But because they didn't do it through unity, as Abraham was teaching, the tower was broken, and all the people there scattered around the globe. Today we're reaching the final stage that the Kabbalists were writing about, that this anti-Semitism that happened and increased during the exile was not allowing the Jews to escape.
Escape where? Oh, to assimilate, to disappear.
To escape from themselves.
What do you mean, from themselves?
Because the hatred kept them together like nuts in a bag.
That's something I wanted to ask, because a lot of people disagree. There are many different kinds of people all over the world. But with Jews, you see very specific hatred toward Jews. You know, I may hate a lot of people, but there's like this worldwide agreement on hating Jews.
True. There's this consensus all over the world of hating the Jews, and it's a spiritual one. It's not written anywhere between people. It lies in nature, whether we like it or not. I grew up in Eastern Europe, and I felt it on myself. Anti-Semitism and pressure, fears and anxiety and so on.
And it seems to go in waves. It seems to go.
It's true that it comes in waves. The point is that that part of Babylon, of the Babylonians who couldn't join the people of Israel because they didn't feel a need for this, they are in opposite qualities with respect to Israel. Israel contained the sparks that have to be awakened, like sparks of light, sparks that need to be elevated, awakened towards the discovery of the spiritual world.
What do you mean? Sparks?
It's like it's a special quality. It's called a quality of the soul that allows the person to awaken his connection with the spiritual world.
So you're saying Jews, all Jews, have this kind of...
It's a part of humanity, first of all. It's not some special species. It's a part of humanity that is just like ordinary people.
Humanoid.
Like. Right, but it contains a contact, like a small pipeline connecting you with the spiritual world.
So it's this.
No, it's passive.
Thing.
It's completely.
It's like dormant.
Yes, it's dormant. It's hidden. The person doesn't even know that. May not even be aware of this, but he has some contact, like a small tube line, but he can revive that line and draw the upper light that will come to fulfill his soul.
It's like there's a hose and there's a valve, and the valve is closed.
Let's say so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then, when one fulfills himself, those people from Babylon who got that ability, it's something that is in Kabbalah called Galgalta Naim. It's a part of all the souls in humanity some of those souls have that connection, that quality of being connected to the upper world. What Abraham did was teaching them how to open that valve and how to fulfill themselves with the upper light. They did that, and they lived with it until they lost that ability. They lived in the time of the first temple, the second temple, and then the ruin. The ruin of the temple happened. Why? Because from brotherly love, they descended to an unfounded
So you're
hatred,
saying
like in Babylon.
the ruin of the second temple is when this valve was shut.
Yes, but the valve was shut only from disconnecting from the others. That's why the condition of love thy friend as thyself, all Israel are brothers, and so on, is the condition. If I'm connected to the spiritual world and connected to you, and I'm connected to you, you're connected to others, and everyone is connected to others in one network, and that's really called people of Israel, then the higher abundance comes into us and fulfills us, and we feel that we are in contact with the upper world. Wait. The fact that we are connected to the upper world, it's not envy. The envy is not towards this, but there is an ability and an opportunity and an obligation on our part to also fulfill all the other souls with the upper light. And just like the whole world today is becoming round and integral, it is showing that it's really the time. Back then, in the time of the exile, people felt it, that what's bad in our world is because there's no higher abundance in it. The Creator does not appear. We don't find the light of life. We live such a short life, and then we die, and that's it. Where is the connection with the source of life? This is up to us to bring to the world.
We, as I mean, Kabbalists or Jews? Who's we?
All
the
Jews.
Jews.
All of them. From the Kabbalists to the rest of the Jews, and from there to the whole world. And the Zohar writes about this, the introduction to the book of Zohar, and many other places. If we do that, then we become what's called a light of the nations. Every Jewish person has heard that it's written somewhere in the Torah that we have to be a light of the nations. That's exactly what it is. So first of all, we have to be connected between us, just like Abraham did it among his students. He is the quality of chesed, the love of Abraham. Everyone is familiar with that. And when you start connecting them together, it just happens that the upper light begins to appear. So he did that between his students, among his students, when they left to the land of Canaan, and this is what we need to do today. It is written that the people of Israel only came out to exile in order to cleanse the souls of the nations, to attach them. So today we are already mingled and integrated, whether it's in America or France or Spain or many other places, and we still don't even know where the 10 tribes that we have lost from the first temple are. They are also part of those people who are capable of connecting to the upper world and bringing light to everyone. So that's 5 times more than what you have now possibly. You have maybe 100 million more Jews, because also they didn't go through all the problems and Holocaust and so on.
Our time is almost up. We only have 25 minutes. So just wrap it up. Summarize why this is happening now, and we'll talk about the rest in our next session.
Yes. But let's at least, summarize it this way. That right now what we have to do is the same action like Abraham did. We are in Babylon, and we have this great Tower of Babel, which is a collective global egoism, and what we need to do is connect together. And connecting in our world, also like what nature demands from us, and how we see that the world is demanding, and the question is, who can provide a plan, the way to realize it? That's the wisdom of Kabbalah. Who can organize this connection? The Jews, for the entire world. That's why anti-Semitism will grow, like it or not, and we won't be able to escape it. We just have to recognize what is called to be a holy nation and a kingdom of priests, like it's written that the Creator wanted to give the Torah to all the nations, but he couldn't. They couldn't accept it, so that's why he gave it to the people of Israel and said, you will be a passageway to the whole of humanity. And today it's the time of realization. Perhaps we'll talk about that in the next time, and we'll see that it's not such a difficult thing for us to do, and by that we will forget about anti-Semitism and rise to the correct level.
We are the ones who already experienced the higher world, and now everyone needs it or wants it, and so they're coming to us because we are the ones who have connection with it.
I would put it differently. I would say this: they feel that the lines through which the abundance comes here are blocked, but we have to show exactly what these words are. What is the sense that they have towards Jews? Where is it coming from? What is happening? What laws? What actions? What are they pointing to? And this requires equal teaching for both the Jewish people and the nations.
Beautiful. So thank you all for being with us. You need to be with us in our next conversation, because that's when we're going to give all the answers to all the questions we just opened up now. So you're all invited, and until next time, see ya.